Okay guys, we're back to the basic boring cube scene, and I'm just going to go over the different ways to light inside of Octane. So first we're going to be going over the Octane daylight system, which is really great, and if you're trying to get a render done really fast, I love the daylight system. It's super accurate and super quick to get great results out of it. So to create a daylight system, you just go to Objects, and then under that you go to Lights, Octane Daylight. Okay, so we have our Octane Daylight right here, and Octane Daylight's really great, and I love using it, but I don't really like the, I guess we could call it the skybox or the HDRI included. So we'll be changing that later and merging it with the daylight system. But for now, we're going to just be going over some daylight settings. The first thing is the Octane Daylight itself. You can rotate it just by transforming it like this, and you can kind of see how the shadows and stuff play off of each other on the scene. You can also see when we drag it down, we get that nice, cool golden hour look, which looks really, really sweet. And inside of our render kernel, it's performing really nicely with this reflection. So that's something to consider as well if you're going for that look. We'll take it a little bit higher and then just go over the settings that are here. So first settings, you click on your daylight system, you have this, but what you're gonna wanna do is click right there, and then you kind of get the daylight tag settings. So the first one, sky turbidity. You slide that up, it's just going to kind of make it more of a cloudy day. So play around with that and you can get some different looks out of it. Next one is power. So if you're on a different planet or you're designing a different planet, you want a different lighting source power, that's a great one to mess around with. We'll change that back to 1 though, because that's the most physically accurate setting for Earth. Then there's north offset, so that's just adjusting your light. If you want to do a quick adjustment to see different shadows and reflections, that's great to do with. And then sun size. So if we were to look in the sky, we'd see a little white light, and I can rotate around and try to find the sun. It's not always easy, but okay, there it is right there. So there's our sun. You see the sky turbidity right there, how it's kind of messing around with it. A different power in the north offset is actually moving it in the sky itself. So we'll just parse sun around there. So sun size, we'll make this really low sky turbidity, and then we can mess with the sun size. So a big sun will actually make the sun bigger. And if we look at our shadows right down here and kind of just what's going on, you'll notice when we change the size of the sun, let's take the power down a bit. When we change the size of the sun, the shadows change as well. So a bigger sun will give you these more diffused looking shadows, which is really cool. This is really great. This scale right here is really great if you're messing with larger objects. So if you were doing like a landscape render or something and you didn't want to make it physically accurate, which I don't recommend you do because that would take a lot of resources, you can just kind of cheat by dragging up the sun size and getting a look like this. There's also sky color. So if you adjust sky color, you can kind of change these around. Sun color as well. And you can get some crazy looks with this. You can create otherworldly atmospheres like a Martian one just by messing with the sun color and the sky color. Kind of will give you different looks inside of it. Okay, so great. We're just going to reset this. I'm just going to delete the sun and create a new one just by going to Lights, Octane Daylight. Awesome. Okay, so we'll transform it back up and get a nice morning look like so. So what we're going to do is merge this with the HDRI. So HDRIs are great for giving you quick environmental lighting and also just a nice background. So we'll go right here and we create our HDRI, click on that, and then click this button right here. So I already have some HDRIs pulled up. We can just select one, and we're going to make sure when you're selecting it that it's the full resolution one. So there we go. We'll go with this. This is from Grayscale Gorilla. I mentioned them in the intro of like gathering assets, so definitely go check them out. Okay, so this is really fun. So you might notice we added it in, but nothing happened. That's totally fine. You're going to go to Octane Daylight and then go to your tag right here and then click Mix Sky Texture. And then it's going to update, and now boom, we have our HDRI and our sun all together. So they're working together. The only problem is that they're coming from different directions, and then we're getting this big hot pixel mess because of it. So what you're going to want to do is go to your Octane Daylight and just scale up your sun size and then start rotating it. And it looks like we're getting kind of close to the right area. There we go. So our sun's really big right now, which is fine. We're going to scale that down. But let's line it up first. And then take your sun size and kind of match it up with your HDRI. This is pretty simple to do. It's a little bit of a hassle, but it's not too bad. And then we get a look like this. So this is something I do want to mention. sometimes inside of Octane, HDRIs misbehave a lot and you get this crazy hot pixel mess. And there's some ways to avoid that. And one is just by switching your render kernels. So path tracing, you can see right there, I cleaned it up a lot. So if you are getting some problems with GI diffuse, I would just consider going to path tracing and then make sure that your GI clamp is at 10, or if even less pixels and noise, go down to 1. I actually did encounter this in many of the renders, so a lot of times I'm just forced to go to path tracing, which is fine, but consider doing that. If you get a bunch of hot pixels, go to the path tracing kernel. Awesome. So that is the Octane Daylight system. We're going to go ahead and just take this out. And now we're going to create some lighting ourselves. So let's zoom out a bit, and we'll just create a regular Octane area light. So I love working with area lights. They're one of my favorites. So just by dragging it in and dropping in, we kind of have a light right here. Now, the scene looks okay, but the problem is, the reason this area light's not looking right is because we don't have any HDRI environments. So we're gonna go here to go to HDRI environment and click right there. If you want to load a texture in, so you can load a texture into your HDRI environment like we did last time, or you can just go over here and go to plugins, 740 Octane, and then we'll go down and we'll try to find RGB spectrum. So it should be under the R's right there. So we have our RGB spectrum loaded in. You can change it to any color that you want, but we're gonna just be doing black because we're doing a lighting system. Awesome. You can see right here, the area light. We'll just take a look at it and transform it. There's a lot of settings you can do with Octane area lights, and they're really fun to mess with. So we'll just take a look at this one. So the first thing we're gonna do is just come over here to the light settings, and you can immediately see you have the power option of the light and then the temperature of the light. And this is great. The temperature option I use a lot. I like to cool my light off a lot, but let's say this is not enough blue in our light. Well, we can go to texture, plugins, C40 Octane, and then go to RGB spectrum again. And now we can change our light to any color we want. Now this is a blue light, and we can make it a nice light orange, or even a dark red. And you can kind of see our scenes reacting to it. So this is the basics of the light and kind of how to set it up. There's another lighting thing that I'm going to go over, and this is more of a material section, but I'm going to show y'all anyway. So we're going to go to shader, C40 Octane, Octane material. And then we're going to take this material and we're just going to drag it onto our cube. And we're going to double click this material, and we can either do it through here or the node editor. So we're going to do it through just this material tag first. So we'll click emission, then click black body emission, then click on the black body emission, and then you can change the power of the light and the temperature as well. And then if you want to, you can go into the node editor, and don't let this blow your mind. If you've never seen the node editor before, it's not that complicated. We'll be going over how to kind of master it really quick. So if you go over your node editor and click the black body emission and drag an RGB spectrum, just plug it in there. I'm going to change the power of it, but that's fine. We're going to just go to shader, and this basic shader right here, and we can just drag in a color that we want the light to be. And now that light is that color. Of course, the light itself is not, because it's so bright, but it's emitting that color under the black body emission. And let's say this is a little too bright for our taste. We can, again, go down, drag the power down, and then change the temperature. This is a really basic thing to do, but I use it in my scenes all the time. So definitely play around with black body emissions. You get some really good practical lighting with them. Okay guys, again, I wanted to give y'all a real render example of lighting applied in this scene again. So first thing I'm gonna do is just jump out of this window and then go down to this one, so I have a perspective view. Kind of just show you all the lighting that's going on. This is a pretty basic scene. We have a camera, a character, and a tree, and then 3 lights. So actually 4 lights, guys, my bad. So our first light is right over here, and this is just a fill light. Let me see if I can find it under here, and there it is. So I can turn it off and then turn it back on. It's really not doing that much, honestly. I could just leave it off in the scene. If anything, it's just filling in these shadows a bit and adding a little bit of light, but not too much. So that's our first light. And our second light right here, I'll turn it off and on. This is the blue light. So what this light is doing is it's kind of creating a moonlight effect, and it's also a contrast light to this orange. So it's playing really nicely with the colors in the scene. You can see without it, way too orange and kind of oversaturated. So we kind of doing contrast color to it looks contrast colors look nice, and they also play nice off each other. So it's really good light. It's also blue, so it looks like the moonlight almost. All right, so then our third light is this orange light, and you can maybe see it on and off. If we zoom in right here, you can see it's just pointed straight down. I'll turn it off. And it's just filling in some more orange. And then our final light is actually just a cylinder. This is without it, and then with it. Without it, the scene looks great, but I just added it in there because the eye is naturally attracted to the brightest parts of an image. So with this specific one, I thought it needed more, we needed more tension on the astronaut, so I just put the cylinder right here. I actually didn't even place it all the way behind him, which I had in my mind, so we could just move that back right there. And it kind of just gives us a different look. Again, we can make this render faster just by doing that. We can see how fast it updates. So this is like the Octane basics of lighting. I didn't use any HDRIs or any Octane daylights. This is just regular lighting inside of a scene, and it works well. I encourage you to play around with lighting, but don't make it so complicated. Really, like 3 points of lighting is all you need, and maybe some practical lighting. Lighting's not complicated. It's just kind of something for you to play around with, and don't stress too much over having these huge light rigs with all these different sources of light. Just play around with 2 or 3 points of light, and you can get some really cool results like this, just with lighting. Okay guys, so that concludes the whole lighting section. I hope I covered all the basics for y'all. We'll be going over more lighting when we start doing renders and how to set up light rigs and different kind of cool different things to do with lighting. But for this is just the basic coverage of lighting.